The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered saloon, and Helena Zimmerman pressed her gloved hand against the window, wondering if running to Saint Elmo, Colorado would prove to be her salvation or her final mistake. The year was 1878, and the mountain town sat perched in the heart of the Rockies, a collection of wooden buildings that seemed to cling desperately to the steep slopes surrounding them. Helena stepped down from the coach, her dark green traveling dress already dusty from the long journey, and surveyed the town that would become her new home. The air was thin and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. Behind the buildings, mountains rose like ancient sentinels, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the late spring warmth. She had $23 to her name, a carpet bag containing everything she owned, and secrets that could destroy her if they ever caught up. At 22 years old, Helena had learned that the past had teeth, and those teeth were always snapping at her heels. "Miss, you need help with your bags." A young boy, no more than 10, appeared at her elbow. "Just the one, thank you." Helena handed him a penny and retrieved her carpet bag herself. She had learned not to let things out of her sight. The boarding house was 3 buildings down from the saloon, a 2-story structure with a hand-painted sign that read, "Mrs. Patterson's Respectable Rooms." Helena climbed the steps and knocked. The woman who answered was round-faced and kind-eyed, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun that contradicted the warmth of her smile. "You must be Miss Zimmerman. Got your telegram last week. Come in, come in." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the main street. Helena set down her bag and fought the urge to check over her shoulder. "Supper is at 6, Mrs. Patterson said. "No men in the rooms, no drinking, no loud noises after 9. Church on Sundays is encouraged but not required." "That sounds perfect, thank you." After Mrs. Patterson left, Helena sat on the bed and allowed herself exactly 1 minute of fear. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her knees. Then she stood, smoothed her skirts, and went to find work. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. The general store needed someone who could read and write, manage inventory, and keep accounts. The owner, Mr. Pemberton, was a thin man with spectacles that kept sliding down his nose. He looked at Helena's references, letters she had carefully forged in 3 different hands, and nodded. "Can you start tomorrow?" "I can start today." He smiled at that. "Tomorrow is soon enough. 8 o'clock sharp." Helena spent the rest of the afternoon walking the town, learning its rhythms. Saint Elmo was a mining town, silver mostly, with a population that swelled and shrank with the fortunes of the mines. The main street boasted 2 saloons, the general store, a boarding house, a small church, a telegraph office, and a handful of other establishments. The sound of hammering echoed from somewhere up the mountain, where new construction was underway. She was standing outside the church, reading the sign that announced Sunday services, when she heard the horses. 4 riders came down the main street at an easy trot, and something about the way people stopped to watch made Helena pay attention. The man in front sat his horse like he had been born in the saddle, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that brushed his collar and several days' worth of stubble shadowing his jaw. He wore a dusty brown coat over a blue shirt, and a revolver sat easy on his hip. He swung down from his horse in front of the saloon, and his eyes swept the street with the casual wariness of someone who had learned to always check his surroundings. For just a moment, those eyes met Helena's, a striking shade of gray-blue, and she felt something catch in her chest. Then he tipped his hat to her, a small gesture of politeness, and disappeared into the saloon with his companions. "That is Xander Whitlock," Mrs. Patterson said. Helena had not heard her approach. "He has a ranch about 5 miles south of here. Good man by all accounts." fair to his workers, honest in his dealings. His father started the ranch 20 years ago, and Xander took it over when his father passed 3 years back. I see, Helena said, trying to sound disinterested. Mrs. Patterson gave her a knowing look. He is unmarried, if you are wondering. Most of the eligible ladies in town have set their caps at him at one point or another, but he is not one to be easily caught. I am not looking to catch anyone, Helena said firmly. I am here to work and build a respectable life. Of course, dear, Mrs. Patterson's tone suggested she had heard such protestations before. That night, Helena lay in her narrow bed and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the mountain town. Somewhere, a dog barked. Music drifted from one of the saloons. She thought about gray-blue eyes and told herself that she had not come all this way to complicate her life with romantic notions. She had come to disappear, to become someone new, to leave behind the mistakes and terrors of her past. But as she drifted off to sleep, she found herself thinking about the way Xander Whitlock had sat his horse and the courtesy in that small tip of his hat. The next morning, Helena arrived at the general store at 7:45. Mr. Pemberton was already there, sweeping the front steps. Punctual. I like that, he said. The work was straightforward and Helena was good at it. She had a head for numbers and a neat hand for writing. By noon, she had reorganized the account books into a system that made sense, and Mr. Pemberton was looking at her with something approaching awe. Where did you learn to do this? My father was a merchant, Helena lied smoothly. He taught me the business before he passed. It was easier than explaining that she had learned to keep books for a gambling house in Denver, that she had seen things no respectable woman should see, that she had fled in the night with blood on her hands and terror in her heart. The bell above the door chimed, and Helena looked up from her ledger to see Xander Whitlock walk in, his hat in his hands. "Morning, Pemberton," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in Helena's chest. "Xander, good to see you. This is Miss Zimmerman, my new clerk." Xander turned those gray-blue eyes on Helena, and she felt her breath catch. Up close, she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes, the weathering of sun and wind on his face. He was perhaps 30, with strong features and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily, though it was serious now. "Miss Zimmerman," he nodded to her, "welcome to Saint Elmo. Thank you, Mr. Whitlock. Just Xander is fine." He turned back to Mr. Pemberton. "I need wire, nails, and about 50 pounds of oats. Also, coffee if you have got it fresh." While Mr. Pemberton gathered the order, Xander stood by the counter, his hat turning slowly in his hands. Helena could feel him watching her as she worked on the ledger, and she kept her eyes down, her pen steady. "You are new to Colorado?" he asked finally. "Yes, I arrived yesterday." "From where, if you do not mind my asking?" Helena had her story prepared. "Kansas. My father passed, and there was nothing left for me there. I am sorry for your loss." The sympathy in his voice sounded genuine. "Thank you." Mr. Pemberton returned with the supplies, and Helena noted the items and prices in the account book under the ranch's name. Her handwriting was clear and precise, and she saw Xander glance at it with approval. "You have good penmanship," he said. "I was well taught." He paid in cash, counted out with the ease of someone who worked with his hands but was not careless with money. Then he loaded his supplies, tipped his hat to both of them, and left. When the door closed behind him, Mr. Pemberton chuckled. Xander is not usually one for conversation. "You must have made an impression." Helena said nothing, but she felt a flutter of something in her chest that might have been pleasure or might have been fear. She could not afford impressions. She could not afford to be noticed or remembered. But over the next 2 weeks, Xander came to the store 3 more times, and each time he found a reason to speak with her. He asked about her adjustment to the altitude, whether she had found the town to her liking, if she had tried the apple pie at the boarding house. His questions were polite and respectful, never prying, but Helena could feel the genuine interest behind them. And despite her best intentions, she found herself looking forward to his visits, found herself listening for the sound of his boots on the wooden steps, found herself choosing her words carefully so she could hear his low rumble of a laugh. It was dangerous. It was foolish. It was everything she had promised herself she would not do. But when Xander asked if she would accompany him to the church social on Saturday evening, Helena heard herself say yes before her rational mind could intervene. The social was held in the churchyard, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees and lanterns strung from the branches. The women of the town had brought food, and there was music from a fiddle and a guitar. Helena wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and she had taken extra care with her hair, pinning it up in a style that was both modest and becoming. Xander arrived at the boarding house at 6 o'clock sharp, wearing a clean shirt and a black vest, his hair damp from washing. He offered his arm, and Helena took it, feeling the solid strength of him through the fabric. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and Helena felt warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself." He laughed at that, and they walked together through the cooling evening air. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple, and Helena felt something loosen in her chest, some knot of tension she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. At the social, Xander introduced her to people, his hand at the small of her back, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. She met the doctor, the schoolteacher, the owners of the saloons and the assay office. They were friendly, curious but not intrusive, and Helena felt herself relaxing into the role she had created, the respectable young woman from Kansas starting over after tragedy. When the music started, Xander asked her to dance, and Helena hesitated. "I am not much of a dancer," she said. "Neither am I. We can be terrible together." She laughed and let him lead her into the space cleared for dancing. He was better than he claimed, moving with the same easy grace he showed on horseback, and Helena found herself following his lead naturally. They danced 3 dances, and with each one, she felt herself drawn closer to him, not just physically but emotionally. There was something solid about Xander, something steadfast and true, and Helena realized with a pang how starved she had been for exactly that. During a break in the music, they walked to the edge of the gathering where they could see the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. "I want to be honest with you," Xander said, his voice low. "I am not a man who plays games. I find you fascinating, Helena, and I would like to call on you properly, if you would allow it." Helena's heart clenched. This was the moment she should discourage him, should put distance between them, should protect him from the disaster she would inevitably bring into his life. Instead, she heard herself say, "I would like that." He smiled then, a full, genuine smile that transformed his serious face, and Helena felt something shift inside her, something that felt dangerously like hope. Over the next month, Xander called on Helena every Sunday after church, and twice during the week when he came to town for supplies. They took walks along the creek that ran through town, sat on the boarding house porch in the evening cool, and talked about everything and nothing. Xander told her about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd, about the challenges of managing the land and the men who worked it. He told her about his father, who had come west with nothing but determination and had built something lasting, and about his mother, who had died when Xander was 15, too young but never forgotten. Helena told him the story she had constructed, the safe lies about a childhood in Kansas, a father who had been a merchant, a quiet life disrupted by loss. And she hated herself for every lie, because Xander's honesty deserved better. But beneath the lies, she let him see the truth of who she was now, who she wanted to be. She told him about her love of books, about her pleasure in numbers and order, about her wonder at the mountains and the big sky. She told him about her fears of not being good enough, of failing, of disappointing people who depended on her. And Xander listened with an attention that made her feel valued, seen in a way she had never experienced before. It was during their 5th Sunday walk that Xander took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers, and Helena felt tears prick her eyes at the simple tenderness of the gesture. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, concern shading his voice. "Nothing." "Everything is right, and that frightens me." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that belied his strength. "You do not have to be frightened with me, Helena. I will not hurt you." "I know you will not mean to," she whispered. "Then what?" She could not tell him, could not explain that her past was a loaded gun pointed at anyone who got close to her, that the man she had killed in Denver had brothers who were looking for her, that she was living on borrowed time in borrowed peace. "I am just not used to happiness," she said instead. "It has been a long time." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a question and a promise all at once, and Helena kissed him back, pouring into it all the longing and hope and terror that churned inside her. When they broke apart, Xander rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you, Helena Zimmerman. I wanted you to know that." "Xander, you do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." But Helena found she could not hold the words back. "I am falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me." "Then we will be terrified together," he said with a small smile. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Helena made a decision. She would tell Xander the truth. Not all of it, not the worst of it, but enough that he could make an informed choice about whether to continue their courtship. She owed him that much. She owed him honesty, even if it cost her everything. But before she could arrange a time to speak with him privately, her past arrived in Saint Elmo on a dusty Tuesday afternoon. Helena was in the store, helping a miner's wife select fabric when the bell chimed and 3 men walked in. She knew them immediately, even though she had never seen them before. They had the same hard eyes as their brother, the same cruel set to their mouths. The eldest, a man with a scar running from his eyebrow to his cheek, looked around the store with barely concealed contempt. His gaze landed on Helena, and she saw the flicker of recognition, the satisfaction of a hunt concluded. "Well, well," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "Hattie Morgan. We have been looking for you." The miner's wife looked between Helena and the men, confusion and fear warring on her face. Helena felt ice flood her veins, but she kept her voice steady. "I think you have mistaken me for someone else. My name is Helena Zimmerman." "Is that what you are calling yourself now?" The scarred man took a step closer. "You can change your name, but you cannot change what you did. You killed our brother, and we have come to settle that debt." Mr. Pemberton had emerged from the back room, his face pale. "Gentlemen, I think you need to leave. You are clearly mistaken." "No mistake, old man. This woman shot our brother dead in Denver 3 months ago. We have been tracking her ever since." Helena's mind raced. She could run, but they would catch her. She could deny it, but they clearly had enough information to make trouble for her. She could try to explain, but men like these did not care about explanations. "I acted in self-defense," she said, lifting her chin. "Your brother attacked me, and I protected myself." "You are a liar and a murderer," the scarred man spat. "And you are going to pay for what you did." The door burst open, and Xander strode in, taking in the scene with a single sharp glance. Behind him were 2 of his ranch hands, both armed. "There seems to be some kind of disturbance," Xander said, his voice calm but with steel underneath. "Perhaps you gentlemen should state your business and move along." The scarred man sized up Xander and his companions. "This is not your concern, Cowboy. This is family business." "Anything involving Miss Zimmerman is my business." Xander moved to stand beside Helena, his presence solid and reassuring. "Now I am going to ask you one more time. State your business or leave." "She murdered our brother," one of the other men said, his hand drifting toward his gun. "Do not," Xander said quietly, and there was something in his voice that made the man's hand freeze. "I do not know what happened between you and Miss Zimmerman, but if you have accusations, you take them to the sheriff. You do not come into a place of business and make threats. That is not how we do things here. We do not need a sheriff for this. We have our own justice. Not in my town, you do not." The new voice came from the doorway, where a man with a silver star pinned to his vest stood, shotgun cradled in his arms. Sheriff Morrison was a lean man in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. "I heard there was trouble brewing. Now you boys want to make a formal complaint, I will hear it, but you are not going to threaten anyone in my jurisdiction. Is that clear?" The scarred man's jaw worked, but he nodded slowly. "We will be making a complaint. This woman murdered our brother in cold blood. Then you can come to my office and we will discuss it proper. But right now, you are going to leave this store and go cool off. When you are ready to talk civilized, you know where to find me." The three men left, but not before the scarred one looked at Helena and said, "This is not over." When they were gone, Helena felt her legs go weak. Xander caught her arm, steadying her. "Perhaps we should talk," he said gently. "Somewhere private." They went to the boarding house, to the small parlor that Mrs. Patterson made available for visitors. Xander sent his ranch hands away and sat across from Helena, his face unreadable. "Tell me the truth," he said. "All of it." Helena took a deep breath and told him. She told him about working in a gambling house in Denver, not as a dealer but as a bookkeeper, about how she had tried to keep her head down and do her job without getting involved in the darker aspects of the business. She told him about Carter Morgan, one of the regulars, who had taken an interest in her that she had rebuffed repeatedly. She told him about the night Carter had followed her to her room, had forced his way inside, had made it clear what he intended. "I had a Derringer," Helena said, her voice shaking now. "2 shots. I fired both when he would not stop, when he put his hands on me. 1 shot missed. The other did not. He died on the floor of my room, and I knew his brothers would not care that it was self-defense. They would only care that he was dead." "So you ran," Xander said softly. "I took what money I had and I ran. I changed my name, I created a new history, and I came here hoping to start over. I never meant to lie to you, Xander. I was going to tell you the truth. I was just trying to find the right time. And now your past has caught up with you." "Yes." Helena met his eyes, hers bright with unshed tears. "I understand if you want nothing more to do with me. I understand if what I did, what I am, is too much. But I need you to know that everything I have felt for you is real. I may have lied about my past, but I never lied about that." Xander was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he reached across the space between them and took her hand. "I believe you," he said. "I believe that you did what you had to do to survive. I believe that you were defending yourself. And I believe that what we have is real. Xander, but I need you to understand something, Helena. Your past does not just belong to you anymore. If we continue down this path, if we build a life together, then your past becomes my past. Those men are not going to just disappear. They are going to make trouble." Helena felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I know. That is why I said my past will haunt your future. You deserve better than this, better than me and the danger I bring." Xander stood and pulled her to her feet, his hands cupping her face the way they had the first time he kissed her. "Listen to me. I do not want better, I want you. And if your past is going to haunt our future, then we will face those ghosts together. Do you understand me? Together." "You are certain," Helena whispered. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He kissed her then, and Helena felt something break open inside her, a dam of fear and loneliness that she had been holding back for so long. She kissed him back fiercely, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a shifting world. When they broke apart, Xander's expression was determined. "Now, we need to talk to the sheriff and figure out how to handle this properly, because those men are not going to let this go, and we need to be prepared." At the sheriff's office, Helena told her story again, this time with all the details, including the fact that she had reported the shooting to the Denver police before she fled. Sheriff Morrison listened carefully, making notes. "The Denver police never contacted us about any warrant for your arrest. If what you say is true and it was self-defense, there should be a record of it." "I gave a statement to a Sergeant Riley," Helena said, "but I did not wait around to see if they would believe me. Carter Morgan came from a wealthy family, and I was just a woman who worked in a gambling house. I did not think I would get a fair hearing." "Maybe not in Denver," the sheriff said, "but this is my town and I run things fair. I will send a telegram to Denver, get the facts. In the meantime, those Morgan brothers are staying at the hotel, and I have made it clear they are to leave you alone. But Miss Zimmerman, I have to ask you not to leave town until this is sorted." "She will be staying at my ranch," Xander said, "where I can make sure she is safe." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "That might not look too proper." "I will marry her if that makes it proper," Xander said calmly. "Today, if she will have me." Helena's breath caught. Xander turned to her, his gray blue eyes serious and steady. "I know this is not how I planned to ask," he said. "I had a whole speech prepared, and I was going to wait until the right moment. But Helena, I love you. I want to spend my life with you, facing whatever comes together. Will you marry me?" Helena's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear over it. "Xander, we have only known each other for 6 weeks. I do not need more time to know what I want, but if you do, I will wait." Helena thought about the life she had been living, always running, always alone, always afraid. She thought about the man in front of her, solid and true, offering her something she had never thought she could have. And she thought about the courage it would take to reach out and grab that offer with both hands. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Xander's face split into a grin, and he pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while the sheriff chuckled. "Well then," Sheriff Morrison said, "I suppose I should get the preacher." They were married an hour later in the small church with Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Pemberton as witnesses. Helena wore her blue dress, and Xander held her hands like they were precious things, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Xander kissed her with a tenderness that made her cry. "I am going to make you happy," he promised against her lips. "I swear it." "You already have," she whispered back. They rode to the ranch in Xander's wagon, and Helena saw her new home for the first time as the sun was setting. The ranch house was a solid timber structure with a wide porch, set in a valley with mountains rising on 3 sides. There were barns and outbuildings, corrals with horses, and in the distance she could see cattle grazing. "It is beautiful," Helena said. "It is home," Xander replied. "Our home now." Inside, the house was comfortably furnished with handmade furniture and worn rugs. Xander showed her around, pointing out the kitchen, the sitting room, the 2 bedrooms upstairs. The master bedroom had a large bed covered in a quilt, a washstand, and windows that looked out over the valley. "I know this is all happening fast," Xander said, suddenly uncertain. If you need time, if you want to take things slow, Helena silenced him with a kiss. I am your wife, Xander, in every way that matters, and I do not want to wait any more. What followed was tender and sweet, awkward in the way of all first times, but full of love and care. Xander was gentle with her, patient, making sure she was ready before moving forward. And when they finally came together, Helena felt tears slide down her temples, overwhelmed by the intimacy of it, by the vulnerability and trust. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, Xander's hand stroking her hair, and Helena felt a peace she had not known was possible. I love you, she said into the darkness. I love you too, Xander replied. And we are going to figure this out, Helena. The Morgan brothers, all of it. We are going to face it together. Together, Helena agreed, and let herself believe it. The telegram from Denver arrived 3 days later. Sergeant Riley confirmed that Helena had indeed reported the shooting, that there had been an investigation, and that the finding had been self-defense. No warrant had been issued for her arrest, and the case was closed. Sheriff Morrison brought the telegram to the ranch himself, riding out in the morning. Xander and Helena were in the kitchen, Helena learning to make biscuits under the tutelage of Maria, the ranch cook, when they heard the knock. Good news, the sheriff said, handing over the telegram. Denver says it was self-defense, no charges. You are in the clear, Mrs. Whitlock. Helena read the telegram twice, hardly daring to believe it. So the Morgan brothers have no claim, no legal claim, the sheriff said. But that does not mean they will let it go. Men like that, pride and revenge matter more than the law sometimes. I am going to tell them they need to leave town, but I cannot force them off public land, and I cannot arrest them for what they might do. I understand, Xander said. Thank you for your help, Sheriff. After the sheriff left, Helena sank into a chair, the telegram clutched in her hands. It is really over. The legal part, at least. It is really over, Xander confirmed. But we are going to stay alert, just in case the Morgans try something foolish. Over the next week, Helena settled into life on the ranch. She learned the rhythms of the place, the early mornings and the hard work, the satisfaction of seeing things grow and thrive under careful tending. She helped Maria in the kitchen, learning to cook for the ranch hands who ate at the main house. She worked on organizing Xander's accounts and correspondence, bringing order to years of haphazard record-keeping. And every night, she fell asleep in Xander's arms, feeling safe and cherished. The Morgan brothers stayed in town for another week, and then the sheriff rode out to inform Xander that they had been seen heading north toward Wyoming. They are gone, Helena asked, hardly daring to hope. For now, the sheriff said, but keep your eyes open. Men like that have long memories. Helena tried to relax, to believe that the threat had passed, but there was a part of her that remained tense, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a month after their hasty wedding when Xander came to her with a proposition. The ranch is doing well, he said. Well enough that I have been thinking about expansion. There is a property about 30 miles north, good grazing land with water rights. The owner wants to sell and the price is fair. That sounds like a good opportunity, Helena said. It is. But it would mean travel, maybe a week away while I inspect the property and negotiate the sale. And I do not want to leave you alone, not with the possibility that the Morgans might come back. I could come with you, Helena suggested. Xander shook his head. It is rough country and I will be camping most of the time. It is no trip for a woman. Helena bristled slightly at that. I am tougher than I look. I know you are, but I would feel better if you stayed here, where there are people around to look after you. Or if you prefer, you could go stay with Mrs. Patterson in town for the week. Helena considered. The ranch felt more like home now than anywhere she had ever lived, and the idea of leaving it, even for a week, held no appeal. I will stay here, Maria will be here and the ranch hands. I will be fine. Xander pulled her close. If I had any concerns at all, I would not go. But the Morgans have been gone for a month, and I think they have given up. Still, I am going to make sure everyone knows to keep an eye out, and if anything seems strange, anything at all, I want you to ride into town and get the sheriff. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her forehead. I will be back before you know it. Xander left 2 days later, riding out before dawn with 2 of his most trusted men. Helena stood on the porch and watched them go, fighting down the unease that coiled in her stomach. The first 3 days passed uneventfully. Helena kept busy with the household accounts, helped Maria with the cooking and cleaning, and even tried her hand at mending, though her stitches were nowhere near as neat as Maria's. In the evenings, she sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the mountains, and thought about how strange and wonderful it was that this was her life now. On the 4th day, one of the ranch hands, a young man named Tom, came to the house looking worried. Mrs. Whitlock, I think you should know. I saw some riders on the ridge this morning watching the ranch. When I rode out to check on them, they took off. Helena's blood went cold. How many? 3, maybe 4, too far away to make out faces. Did you tell the others? Yes, madam. We are keeping watch and we have got rifles ready. But I thought you should know in case you want to ride into town. Helena thought about it. The riders could be anyone, travelers passing through, hunters. But her instincts, honed by months of running, told her differently. I am going to stay, she said. But let's make sure all the doors and windows are secured and that someone is on watch at all times. That night, Helena barely slept. Every sound made her start. Every creak of the house settling made her reach for the small revolver Xander had insisted she keep in the nightstand. When dawn finally came, she was exhausted and jittery. Maria found her in the kitchen, trying to make coffee with shaking hands. You should go to town, Maria said gently. Wait for Xander there where it is safe. I am not going to be driven out of my own home, Helena said, more sharply than she intended. I am sorry, Maria. I am just tired. I know, Mija, but sometimes the brave thing is knowing when to ask for help. Before Helena could respond, they heard shouting from outside. She ran to the window and saw smoke rising from one of the barns. Fire, someone was yelling. Fire in the barn. Helena ran outside along with Maria and all the ranch hands. The barn was fully ablaze, flames licking at the dry wood, and the horses inside were screaming in terror. Get the horses out, Tom yelled, and several men ran into the smoke. Helena was helping to calm the frightened animals when she heard Maria scream. She spun around to see 3 men on horseback riding into the ranch yard, guns drawn, the Morgan brothers. There you are, the scarred one said, pointing his revolver at Helena. We have been waiting for your cowboy to leave. Now it is just you and us. The ranch hands were outnumbered and outgunned, and they knew it. They stood frozen, caught between the need to fight the fire and the need to protect their boss's wife. Let them fight the fire, Helena said, stepping forward. This is between you and me. There is no need for anyone else to get hurt. Smart woman, the scarred man said. You boys go ahead and save what you can. We are just going to have a conversation with the lady here. Helena walked toward them, her mind racing. She could try to run, but they would shoot her down. She could try to fight, but she was one woman against 3 armed men. Her only chance was to buy time, to hope that someone had seen the smoke and would come to investigate. What do you want? She asked, stopping a few yards from the horses. You know what we want. Justice for our brother. Your brother attacked me. I defended myself. The law in Denver said it was self-defense. We do not care what the law says. We care about blood for blood. Helena lifted her chin. Then shoot me. But know that when you do, you are going to hang for it. The sheriff knows who you are and why you are here. If I die, he will know who to blame." The scarred man smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Who said anything about shooting you? No, we have got something else in mind. A little frontier justice. We are going to take you with us, and we are going to make sure you suffer the way our brother suffered." Terror flooded Helena, but she kept her voice steady. "My husband will come after you. He will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Let him try. By the time he finds you, there will not be much left to find." One of the other brothers dismounted and started toward Helena. She backed up, looking around desperately for anything she could use as a weapon, any means of escape. And then she heard it, the thunder of hoofbeats, and Xander came riding around the corner of the burning barn, his rifle raised. "Step away from my wife," he said, his voice cold and deadly. The Morgan brothers turned, surprise flashing across their faces. Xander was not alone. Behind him were Sheriff Morrison and 6 deputized townsmen, all armed. "You are surrounded," the sheriff called out. "Put down your weapons and surrender, or I will authorize my men to shoot." For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then the scarred Morgan made a move for his gun, and Xander fired. The shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking him off his horse. The other 2 Morgan brothers threw down their weapons immediately, their hands in the air. "Do not shoot. We surrender." The deputies moved in, securing the men with rope while the sheriff checked on the wounded brother. Xander swung down from his horse and ran to Helena, pulling her into his arms. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand, and he held her tight, murmuring reassurances into her hair. "I have got you. You are safe. I have got you." "How did you know?" she managed to ask. "I got a bad feeling yesterday, like something was wrong. So we rode through the night to get back. When we got close enough to see the smoke, I knew. I sent one of the men to get the sheriff while we rode ahead." Helena buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, all the fear and tension of the past months pouring out in great shaking sobs. Xander held her through it, steady and solid, until she had no tears left. When she finally pulled back, she saw that the fire was out, the barn damaged but not destroyed, and the horses were all safe. The Morgan brothers were being loaded into a wagon, the wounded one cursing and groaning. "They are going to stand trial for arson and attempted kidnapping," the sheriff said, walking over. "An attempted murder, given that they set that fire while people and animals were inside. They will be going to prison for a long time, Mrs. Whitlock. This is over." Helena sagged against Xander. "It is really over. It is really over," he confirmed. The trial was held 3 weeks later in the county seat. Helena testified about what had happened, both in Denver and at the ranch. The ranch hands testified about the fire and the threats. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury took less than an hour to return a guilty verdict. The Morgan brothers were sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. As they were led away, the scarred one looked at Helena with such hatred that she felt ice run down her spine. But then Xander was there, his hand warm in hers, and she remembered what he had said. Together, they rode back to the ranch that evening as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. The barn had been repaired, the horses were healthy, and life had returned to normal. "I was thinking," Xander said as they sat on the porch, watching the stars come out, "that maybe we should take a trip. Go somewhere peaceful, somewhere we can just be together without looking over our shoulders." "Where would we go?" "There is a cabin up in the high country by a lake. My father built it years ago for when he wanted to get away. It is beautiful up there, quiet. We could go for a week or 2, just the 2 of us." Helena smiled. "That sounds perfect." They went the following week, packing supplies and riding up into the mountains until they reached a small, crystal-clear lake surrounded by pines. The cabin was simple but well-built, with a fireplace and a comfortable bed. For 10 days, they lived in their own little world. They fished in the lake, hiked through the forest, and made love under the stars. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and fears, building the foundation of their life together. It was on the last night, as they lay together by the fire, that Helena told Xander she was pregnant. He stared at her for a moment, his expression stunned, and then joy spread across his face like sunrise. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. Maria noticed before I did, actually. She said I had the look." Xander pulled her into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that made her throat tight. "We are going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "You and me, a family. Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "You have given me everything, Helena. A purpose, a home, a future, and now a child. I do not have words for what that means to me." Helena kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "You saved me, Xander. In every way that matters, you saved me." "No," he said firmly. "You saved yourself. You survived, you fought, you found your way to a new life. I just got lucky enough to be part of it." They returned to the ranch the next day, and Helena immediately began preparing for the baby. She sewed tiny clothes, organized a nursery in the smaller bedroom, and read every book about childbearing she could get her hands on. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Helena was sick in the mornings and tired in the afternoons. Xander fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest, bringing her tea and crackers, refusing to let her do anything strenuous. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Helena protested. "I know, but you are carrying something precious, and I am going to make sure you both stay safe." Their son was born on a cold February morning in 1879, after a labor that lasted 14 hours. Maria and the doctor from town attended, while Xander paced the hallway, wearing a track in the floorboards. When the baby's cry finally rang out, strong and healthy, Xander burst into the room, his face alight with joy and relief. "You have a son," the doctor said, handing the tiny bundle to Helena. Helena looked down at the small face, the dark eyes that were trying to focus, the perfect tiny fingers, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "He is beautiful," she whispered. Xander sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, looking down at their son with awe. What should we name him? They had discussed names for weeks, but now, looking at the baby, Helena knew. "James, for new beginnings." "James Whitlock," Xander said, testing it out. "I like it." "Welcome to the world, James." The baby's first year was a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Helena discovered reserves of strength and patience she had not known she possessed. Xander was a devoted father, rocking James when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, and singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. The ranch prospered. Xander's expansion plans came to fruition, and they bought the northern property, increasing their grazing land significantly. They hired more hands, built new barns, and improved the breeding stock. Helena took over all the bookkeeping and correspondence, turning out to have a sharp business mind that complemented Xander's practical ranching knowledge. When James was 2, Helena discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she was not surprised by the morning sickness or the fatigue. She simply smiled, told Xander, and watched him light up with the same joy as the first time. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1881, a quick and relatively easy birth that left both mother and baby healthy and strong. They named her Sarah, and she had Helena's dark hair and Xander's gray-blue eyes. With 2 small children, life on the ranch became even busier. But it was a good kind of busy, full of laughter and love and the simple satisfaction of building something lasting. Helena often thought about how far she had come from that terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Saint Elmo. She had been running from her past, convinced that happiness was not meant for someone like her. But she had found Xander, and he had taught her that the past did not have to define the future, that ghosts could be faced and overcome, that love was stronger than fear. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Xander gave her a locket. Inside were tiny photographs of James and Sarah. "So you can carry them with you always," he said. Helena fastened it around her neck, feeling the weight of it against her heart. "I already do, but thank you. It is perfect." They were standing on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, James playing with his toy horses at their feet and Sarah asleep in Helena's arms. "You ever regret it?" Xander asked quietly. "Marrying me so quickly, taking on all this?" Helena looked at him, at the man who had stood by her through everything, who had faced down her demons with her, who had built a life with her brick by brick. She thought about the fear that had driven her here and the love that had made her stay. "Not for a single second," she said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Xander Whitlock. You and these babies, this life, all of it. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that promised forever. "I love you, Helena. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you too." James tugged on Xander's pants. "Papa, look, horsey." Xander scooped him up, tossing him gently in the air and catching him, delighting in the child's giggles. Helena watched them, her heart full to bursting. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. He followed his father everywhere, learning to ride, to rope, to care for the animals. Sarah was more adventurous, more likely to get into mischief, with a laugh that could light up the darkest day. When James was 7 and Sarah was 5, they welcomed another baby, a boy they named Thomas. And 3 years after that, their family was completed with the birth of another daughter, Grace. The ranch house, once so quiet, was now filled with the chaos and joy of 4 children. There were scraped knees to bandage, fights to mediate, bedtime stories to raid, and endless questions to answer. Helena sometimes felt overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of it all, the responsibility of raising these small humans into good people. But then Xander would find her, would pull her into his arms and remind her that they were in this together, and she would find her center again. They had challenges, of course. There were years when the weather was bad and the cattle struggled. There were illnesses that kept them up all night with worry. There were moments of doubt and fear. But they faced it all together, just as Xander had promised that day in the boarding house parlor. The children grew, and so did the ranch. James, at 16, was already a skilled rancher, with his father's steady hands and his mother's head for business. Sarah, at 14, had her mother's determination and her father's adventurous spirit. Thomas, at 9, was quiet and bookish, more interested in reading than roping. And Grace, at 6, was the baby of the family, spoiled and loved by all. One evening, when all the children were asleep and the house was finally quiet, Helena and Xander sat on the porch as they had done 1,000 times before. "You remember what I said to you?" Helena asked. "That my past would haunt your future." "I remember," Xander said. "And I remember what I said in return, that we would face those ghosts together. We did we not? We faced them and we won." "We did more than that," Xander said, taking her hand. "We built a life so full of love and joy that the past could not touch it. We proved that where you come from matters less than where you are going." Helena leaned her head on his shoulder, looking out at the ranch they had built together, the life they had created. I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought I deserved it." "You deserve every bit of it and more," Xander said firmly. "You are the strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known, and I am grateful every single day that you said yes to me." "It was the easiest yes I ever gave," Helena said. "Even when I was terrified, even when I thought it was a mistake, some part of me knew that you were what I had been searching for all along." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. The night was cool and clear, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "What do you think the future holds for us?" Helena asked. Xander considered. "I think it holds grandchildren eventually. I think it holds more sunrises like this one, more challenges overcome, more moments of grace. I think it holds us together until the very end." "That sounds perfect," Helena whispered. As the years continued to unfold, that prediction proved accurate. James married a local girl, the daughter of a neighboring rancher, and they built a house on the northern property. Their first child, a boy, was born when Helena was 43, making her and Xander grandparents for the first time. Holding that tiny baby, feeling the weight of him in her arms, Helena was struck by the miracle of it all. From the scared woman fleeing Denver to this, a grandmother surrounded by love and family, seemed like an impossible journey. But she had made it, step by step, with Xander beside her. Sarah, true to form, surprised everyone by falling in love with a teacher who came to Saint Elmo to start a school. They married and moved to Denver, though they visited often, bringing tales of city life that fascinated the younger children. Thomas went to college, the first in the family to do so, studying literature and history. He returned to the ranch with a love of learning that he passed on to his younger sister, spending hours teaching Grace to read and discussing books with her. Grace, the baby, grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's determination and her father's kindness. She had a gift with horses, and she helped expand that part of the ranch business, breeding and training horses that became sought after throughout Colorado. As Helena and Xander entered their 50s, the ranch was thriving under the joint management of the family. James handled the daily operations with skill and dedication. Grace managed the horse breeding program, and Helena and Xander, while still active, were able to step back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. They took trips together, traveling to places they had only dreamed about. They went to San Francisco and saw the ocean for the first time. They visited Sarah in Denver and marveled at how the city had grown. They spent long weeks at the cabin by the lake, just the two of them, reconnecting and remembering. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. All the children and grandchildren, the ranch hands past and present, neighbors and friends from town. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and speeches that made Helena cry with joy. James stood up to give a toast. His own children gathered around him. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. Who showed us that the past does not have to define you, that courage comes in many forms, and that family is everything. To Xander and Helena Whitlock, the foundation upon which all of this was built." Everyone raised their glasses, and Helena looked at Xander, seeing in his eyes the same love that had been there that first day he had asked to call on her. "We did all right, did we not?" she whispered to him. "We did more than all right," he replied. "We built something beautiful." The party continued late into the night, but eventually, Helena and Xander slipped away to their usual spot on the porch. The night was warm and clear, and the valley below was dotted with the lights from the various buildings and homes that made up their expanded ranch. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not gotten on that stage coach to St. Elmo?" Xander asked, Helena considered. Sometimes, but I do not dwell on it. That life, that scared woman, she is part of my story, but she is not the whole story. The whole story is this, right here. You, the children, the grandchildren, the life we built together. I am glad you got on that stage, Coach, Xander said. So am I. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands, comfortable in the quiet that comes from decades of companionship. You know what I think about, Xander said eventually. I think about that day in the boarding house when you told me about your past, when you were so certain that I would walk away, that you were too damaged, too dangerous to love. I remember. I was terrified. And I told you that we would face those ghosts together. And we did, Helena. We faced them and we conquered them, and we built this incredible life on the other side of that fear. Helena felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind that came from overwhelming gratitude. You saved me, Xander. No, he said, the same argument they had been having for 25 years. You saved yourself. I just loved you while you did it. Then I am grateful for that love. It changed everything. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Helena reflected on the unlikely path that had brought her here. She thought about Carter Morgan, about the fear and desperation that had driven her from Denver. She thought about the Morgan brothers, about facing them down and finding the strength to stand her ground. She thought about every moment of doubt, every flash of fear, every time she had wanted to run. And she thought about Xander, who had stood beside her through it all, who had loved her not despite her past but including it, who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had chosen to stay. The ghosts of her past had indeed haunted their future, but not in the way she had feared. Instead of destroying what they built, those ghosts had become part of the foundation, proof that love could triumph over fear, that the past could be integrated rather than escaped, that two people facing challenges together were stronger than any obstacle. Years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that time always brings. Mrs. Patterson passed away, leaving Helena her collection of recipe books with a note that said, "For the girl who came to Saint Elmo looking for a fresh start and found a whole life instead." Mr. Pemberton retired and sold the store to James, who added it to the family's holdings. Sheriff Morrison, now old and gray, finally hung up his badge and spent his remaining days fishing the streams around Saint Elmo. Helena and Xander grew old together, their hair turning silver, their movements slower but their love as steady as ever. They became the matriarch and patriarch of a sprawling family that included not just their children and grandchildren, but great-grandchildren as well. On a warm summer evening, when Helena was 68 and Xander was 73, they sat on the porch as they had done countless times before. Xander's hands were gnarled from a lifetime of hard work, but they were still strong as they held Helena's. "I want you to know something," Helena said, her voice soft in the gathering dusk. "Every single day I have spent with you has been a gift. Every moment, even the hard ones, even the scary ones. All of it has been more than I ever dreamed was possible." Xander squeezed her hand gently. "The feeling is entirely mutual, my love." They watched the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in colors that never seemed to repeat, and Helena felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced her ghosts, with Xander strong beside her, and they had built a life that was testament to the power of love, courage, and commitment. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through the generations they had created. The story of their love would be told and retold, growing with each telling but always rooted in the truth of that hasty wedding, that fierce determination to face the future together. As the stars began to appear, Xander spoke quietly. "You remember what you said that day? My past will haunt your future. I remember everything about that day. I am glad your past brought you to me, Helena. I am glad for every step of the journey that led you to Saint Elmo, to this ranch, to our life together. Because without that past, I would not have the incredible present we have built." Helena leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the same heart that had chosen to love her when she felt unlovable, that had stood firm when she was ready to run, that had beat in time with hers for nearly half a century. "We faced those ghosts together," she said softly, "just like you promised." "Just like I promised," Xander agreed. "And I would do it all again, 1,000 times over, for one more day with you." They sat together as the night deepened. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a legacy of love that would outlast them both. The ghosts of the past were finally, truly laid to rest, transformed by time and love into nothing more than memories, lessons learned, stepping stones on the path to happiness. Inside the house, laughter rang out as their great-grandchildren played. The ranch land stretched out around them, prosperous and thriving. And on the porch, in the gathering dark, Helena and Xander Whitlock held hands and counted their blessings, grateful for every moment of the beautiful, unexpected life they had created together. Years later, when both had passed peacefully into the next world, surrounded by the love of their enormous family, the story of their romance became legend in Saint Elmo. People spoke of the woman who arrived with nothing but secrets and courage, and the cowboy who loved her enough to face any ghost. They spoke of a love that had built an empire, that had created a dynasty, that had proven that the past did not have to be a prison. The ranch remained in the family for generations, each new steward adding to its legacy while honoring the foundation that Helena and Xander had laid. In the house, in a place of honor, hung a photograph taken on their 50th wedding anniversary. In it, Helena and Xander stood on the porch of their home, their hands joined, their faces weathered by time but glowing with unmistakable love. Beneath the photograph, a small plaque bore an inscription, words that had become the family motto: "We face our ghosts together." It was a promise that had been kept, a vow that had been honored, and a love story that had transcended fear to become something timeless and true. And in the mountains of Colorado, where the air is thin and clear, and the stars shine bright, that love story lived on, a testament to the transformative power of facing your fears with someone strong beside you, to the possibility of redemption and new beginnings, and to the simple, profound truth that love, real love, can conquer anything. The end.